All right, let's kick this thing off. Thank you all for tuning into this partner spotlight. I'm Jeff Harris, and I'm excited to welcome Nick Sczerbinski from Quinnipiac Athletics. Nick, welcome.
What's going on, Jeff? Thanks for having me.
I did say your last name right?
I wasn't sure if you were going to pause and not know how to say it, but you nailed it. That's not a common occurrence.
Perfect. That's a great start.
Yeah.
For all those who haven't, seen our partner spotlights in the past, the purpose of these is really to highlight our partners and the amazing work that they do, and really tap into what makes them tick. So again, thank you, Nick, for joining in on this. The first question that I have for you is, a lot of our partners have probably seen your name in the Slack community or on our partner roundtables, which again, thank you for being so active on those. But for those that don't actually know you in person, can you give us just a quick background on yourself, maybe where you grew up in your journey to Quinnipiac?
Sure. Yeah. I'm currently probably seen as the really long name and the really long college. So a lot of confusion, I'm sure, when you see my name pop up on there. So I'm the associate athletic director for communications at Quinnipiac, which is located in Connecticut, just outside of New Haven, in Hamden. I grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island my whole life, all the way through high school, and then actually went to Quinnipiac for undergrad. Graduated 2014. So that's the first part of my journey that got me to Quinnipiac. Did a lot of work with marketing, game day staff, event, all that promotions, as well as athletic communications in my 4 years, and studied journalism. So I had that side of things as an undergrad. And then my first job actually was back home working at University of Rhode Island, about a half hour from my parents' house in their communications department. So went into that as an SID, went from there to Emmanuel College in Boston, which is a D3 school up in the city, and did that for a year and a half as an assistant SID. And then Quinnipiac actually started, it was the first time they had specific positions for athletic marketing at that point. And I was lucky enough to be able to come back as the assistant director of marketing for about almost 2 years, right about 2 full years, until my current position, which I was elevated into 2 years now. I just finished my second academic year in this position. So my goal when I left Quinnipiac as an undergrad was always to come back. Really had a great experience there, and everything about it was positive for me. So I knew if I could come back and give back what I got as an undergrad, that would be my goal. And luckily enough, I've been able to do that. And going into year 5, my brother's going to be a sophomore next year at Quinnipiac. So it's a little bit of a family affair, and definitely the place I look forward to being as long as I can.
Nice. Has sports always been something that you've known you wanted to go into, or was there like a specific thing that kind of shifted you that way?
Yeah. So not necessarily sports in this way. I don't think really any of us know, growing up, like, oh, I want to be an SID, or I want to work in, did social media. No one knew that, I actually, from as long as my family and as long as I can remember, wanted to do play-by-play. I would play video games when I was 7 years old and turn the volume off and do play-by-play myself. So
That's
I really,
so awesome.
I mean, that was like, if you could ask my cousin, one of my younger cousins, he'll always remember, like, we'll play games now still, and he'll say, oh, are you going to do the play-by-play? You got to remember when you used to do that. And it's just something that always sticks in people's heads, that I had fun with it and it was awesome. And that's what I went to school for. I went for broadcast journalism and tried to do the play-by-play thing. And I did every one of our, I guess we have probably 18 sports that you could do play-by-play for at Quinnipiac. And I did at least one event for all of them when I was there. From soccer, hockey, basketball, to acrobatics and tumbling, field hockey, which I had never seen till I started the game. So that was really, I knew I wanted to be in sports because of that. And then my experience just at Quinnipiac really is what shifted me, knowing that family was important to me, and the rest of your parts of life were important. The travel and everything that went into play-by-play just didn't connect with me after a certain part of college. So I shifted towards this.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And now, before we move on, I have to touch on it. So when you mentioned with field hockey, you had no clue like how the sport was
Yep.
played. Did you literally just commentate on the fly and just learn the sport as you went?
Yeah. So I had never seen a minute of the sport in my life. And my freshman year, I was like, why not? Let's try it. I knew ice hockey. I was like, yeah, it's probably close enough. It wasn't. I went on and genuinely, like, I watched YouTube videos and read the Wikipedia field hockey Wikipedia page and tried to learn as much as I could. And naturally, I ended up in a 1-0 double overtime game.
Of
So there was
course.
nothing to talk about action-wise for someone who didn't know what they were doing. I think my best line of that game was, well, looks like someone was just given a green card, and I'm not sure what it was for, but your guess is as good as mine. And that was like so I wouldn't necessarily watch that one back if I was you, or if I were you or anyone else trying to be a broadcaster. But you live and you learn. I jumped in and tried to figure it out, and a year later I was doing men's hockey and figuring it out. So
Gotcha. Yeah, there's definitely a good lesson in there. Like even
part of
if
the
you
journey.
don't know exactly what you're doing, just dive in and you can learn on the way.
Yeah, I mean, I went from that and then ended up doing field hockey and lacrosse. I did women's lacrosse every game for junior and senior year. Like I was the guy, and I hadn't seen a lacrosse game in person at that
Hmm.
level at all. So I tell kids now that are coming up through this student media at Quinnipiac, like, yeah, you've never done it, but no one's ever done it until they do it. Like
Yep.
you have to just jump in and do it, and don't say, well, I played soccer growing up, so I'll just do soccer, because how many soccer play-by-play jobs are there in the United States? Not
Yep.
a ton. So, and it's a tough business, so you have to give yourself a chance. Like I always tell myself that there's only 32 TV play-by-play jobs in the entire NHL in the country. There's only 32 guys that do that, or women that do that. It's
Hmm.
like, you got to figure it out. You got to find a way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, yeah, thank you for that. And then as we really, dive into your job specifically and how you approach things at Quinnipiac, when it comes to your strategy on social, is if there is one word or a very short sentence kind of describe your strategy, what would it be?
Yeah, it's funny when I read through your questions before, just to kind of prep a little bit more prep than I probably did for that field hockey game. The first word that came to my mind, it doesn't really sound right, but the first word was hungry. I think we at Quinnipiac are still trying to prove ourselves in a lot of ways. We've only been Division I for 21 years. And because of the success that we've had in a lot of sports, and thankfully the things that we've done at a certain level to be recognized, and with the Sweet 16 and the men's hockey program going where they've gone, and the rugby team winning 3 championships, national championships, and everything else, I think we still feel like, we've gotten to a certain point, but we got to prove ourselves in a lot of ways. So with our social media, the numbers are not always at that level of the teams we're competing with. But we know that we can get there. So I think hungry is just everything we're doing has a purpose and is targeted towards, where are we going to get to next? And I think that's the biggest piece for us.
Gotcha. And I'm sure this kind of goes right into this next question. So, since Quinnipiac is a smaller Division I school, what does your department or team look like? Do you rely a lot on student interns? Do you have many full-time employees? And how do you guys kind of go about prioritizing which sports you're hitting on throughout the course of the day, week, month, year?
Yeah, so we're in a good position. It's interesting. Like comparatively to when I was working as a student, it was very reliant on student workers and student interns because of just the position they were in at that point. They were 2 full-time with 2 GAs, and everybody else was just students that were going to make it happen. Fast forward to now, and it's myself with 3 other full-time athletic communications assistants, which are assistant SIDs. We have 1 GA that does a couple of our sports as an SID in that role. And then we have 1 full-time specific video person. So he does everything video for our department. So comparatively at Quinnipiac to where we used to be, having 5 full-time and 1 GA with our 21 sports, we're in a really good spot. And then we start to compare ourselves to those, the Nebraskas and these big-time schools that we want to excel to be close to their level. and you see like 7 full-time just for video, and my guy is
Mhm.
one guy that graduated college 2 years ago that just crushes. He's done like 400 videos this year by himself, so it's all relative to where you compare to. We're grateful to be in the position we're in because we've been able to thrive and do a lot at our level. But as you know better than a lot of people, in order to keep on getting better and growing, it's, where do we get to next?
Yep.
So in terms of prioritizing, we genuinely try the best that we can to treat every single program and every account as at the highest level that we can with our product and our quality. Each of us, in terms of the 4 SIDs and the GA, have our own sports that we're the contacts for, as a lot of places do. We don't have one person that's specifically social media for the department. It's really, the 5 of us plus our video guy. So 6 of us are controlling everything or conceptualizing everything. So yeah, it's been interesting. Like if we have, one of my staff members that does softball, hockey, soccer, doesn't have basketball as one of their sports, maybe has an idea at one of our meetings that, hey, we should try this for basketball. We're going to try it, so it's not something where it's siloed. We recognize we need these ideas and got to keep on pushing to get new things out there. And so far it's worked. So
Is that something where you kind of view that as a positive for you guys? Like, since you are a smaller team, you can, you can move quicker. Like you said, it's not siloed. So you guys are all talking to each other all the time, and you can really share ideas and try a lot of new things.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an advantage. Everyone in our department came into this department in the last 2 years. 3 of us, including myself, are Quinnipiac alums. Our GA is a Quinnipiac alum as well. So there's a lot of ties that have been able to expedite our communication process and build that dynamic that we have. I'm not going to say it was easy when we first started with everyone being new. It was at the beginning of last year was a struggle. But getting to this point now, we see it as an advantage that, yeah, it goes back to that word, like we're all hungry. We're all still green enough in our careers that we're trying to prove ourselves as well as prove our programs. So it's all kind of that same mindset of like, okay, everything that we do has the potential to be that next big thing that puts us on the map, whether it's individually or for the department. So let's just find ways to do it. Cause if I do it or you do it, or, one of the other guys in the office or girls in the office does it, it's going to benefit all of us. And we've really embraced that culture, really quickly.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know if I organized these questions just really well, or if that's a great segue to this next one. But the next one I have on this list here is just what is it that gets you excited every day to come into work? I feel like you kind of touched on that a little bit with, how one person, one thing can really, potentially blow up and take you guys to the next level. But I'll let you answer that. What is something that, when you wake up in the morning that you are excited about, to drive into work or hop on your computer at home to accomplish?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm really lucky to be able to say that, like, my answer to this is the place that I do it at is what gets me excited. Like, I think the job that we do is important, and I probably would enjoy doing it anywhere. And working with the athletes and just working in sports is something that I don't take for granted. And the student athletes are a big part of it for me. But the number one thing is just the fact that I get to do it at a place that, means so much to me personally, really drives that whole thing, on the tough days, especially now, like working from home and everything going on in the world and trying to balance, right and wrong, and balance what's important and what is actually important. Those things I think are a little bit easier to do and a little bit easier to deal with when you're doing it for an institution and a department that you actually, you really believe in beyond a paycheck. I went to school in 2010, in the fall of 2010. So I'm going on 10 years of some affiliation to Quinnipiac in some way. And the biggest thing about that place is the community and the people. So for me, I think anything that the job was going to entail, as long as I'm doing it here, we're going to be able to deal with. If I had to go through some of the stuff we've gone through in the last few months at a place that I wasn't as passionate about, I think I may have had some issues.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. When you do have those tough days, sometimes you need that extra thing that gets you going. And, when you're working for a school, obviously the paycheck is nice, but, there's so many other reasons that you're tied to that university. So it really gives you that extra motivation to keep going.
I mean, the perfect example, like at the end of a long week, a couple weeks ago, it was just, one thing after another, as it is for everybody. And we had a Zoom call with basically almost every member of our first Frozen Four men's hockey team that I was moderating and hosting. And it was like 6:00 at night, because that was what time worked for all the guys. And I was looking forward to it, but I really was like, I wish we could just do this, and hopefully this is easy. But once it started, the fact that we're talking about a year, it was my junior year as an undergrad. Mm-hmm. So because I had kind of that buy-in, like I was a part of it from the other side, it just gave me that kind of extra motivation to be like, okay, this is actually I'm getting paid to do this. This is my job, to talk about the best times of my life, it was cool to have that perspective and to do it. So that was kind of a small reminder of like, okay, it's, it could be worse.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's sweet. Yeah. The last few questions that we have here are a little more just like on the fun side. So this first one, I feel like I kind of know what direction you're going to go with this answer, but if you didn't, if there were no limitations, you could do whatever you wanted to, what would be your dream job? Like, what's that thing that you're, maybe one day I would be able to do that, or just like when you were a kid, you're like, hey, I really want to be, and I would guess play-by-play for somebody. But what would you say that would be?
There's probably layers to it. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to not do the play-by-play. I wanted to play in the NHL. Like that's just, I wanted to lift the Stanley Cup and do it, do the whole thing. I learned very quickly in my hockey career, as most of my teammates will tell you, that was not a viable option. I had a much better chance of lifting the cup as a play-by-play guy or an executive or a coach than I did as a player. So that shifted very quickly. I think, my realistic, that attainable dream job would have been to be Doc Emmerich and doing the play-by-play, at a national level for the NHL, or a team, the Bruins play-by-play. That'd be where I would go. The kind of second tier to that, of one that would be less attainable but more of a dream, would be the head coach of the Bruins. I've coached hockey now for, probably 10, right when I went to college, so about 10 years. Youth hockey, and I love it, every part of it. So that's something that there's always one of those days every few weeks that you're like, maybe I should just stop doing this and go coach. Like maybe we can try it. Never going to happen at that level, but that would be probably the next big thing. Yeah.
I'm going to have to start calling you Coach Bombay. That's just who I pictured now.
Works for me.
And then, you also touched on this. I was just going to ask, you touched on hockey, but are there other teams that you follow in other sports that, is the main one that you root for?
Yeah, the Bruins are by far, as you can see in the background, the Bruins are by far my, if I had to pick one, that's the diehard team and sport that I follow by a long shot. After that, believe it, it's going to surprise you, but the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys, are my NFL team. Growing up in New England, always rooted for the Patriots. My dad is a Cowboys fan from the 90s, and I was born in 92, which was the height of everything with the Cowboys. And I always have had an affinity. In the last probably, 6 or 7 years, I've really jumped into the fan base and following, and finally saw them play in person last year. So that's probably second after the Bruins, but it's all Boston except for the Cowboys.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then Chelsea in the Premier League.
I was gonna say, so I don't feel bad for you at all, because Boston had a run of so many years recently where you guys have won.
We've won a few. Yeah. We've won a few. The fact that my brother's born in 2000 and roots for the Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins, Patriots, and has seen every year since he's been born one of the teams from Boston go to the conference finals every year. That's the part, and like I said, I root for the Patriots when they're on. I root with my family. My fiance's family are Patriots fans. So you know, it's enjoyable when they win the Super Bowl, and I would be lying if I didn't say I root for them second. So I can take some of the joy of their wins as well. but it hasn't been difficult. I enjoy being a Cowboys fan because there's some of a struggle to it. It's too easy to be a Patriots fan.
Yeah, for sure. This last one on here, especially with everything going on, everybody working from home, I'm sure Netflix is getting used a little bit more, but what's your favorite show that you've seen recently, or which one are you currently binge watching today?
Well, if my boss sees this, I haven't watched any. I've been working.
After hours, on weekends.
Yeah, right. On the couple hours that we're not working. No, I'm actually in between. This week I just finished The Sopranos.
Ooh.
And I admittedly had never seen more than an episode or two here and there. They've had HBO for free on Hulu for a little while, and I committed and locked in. And then with one season left, they pulled it. So I had to get 1 month of HBO that I paid for, because I was like, I'm not going to end this now. So that was a run for a couple weeks that I just went on and rolled through the whole thing. And that was a ride that, I highly recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it. So that's the top. I don't know what I'll go to next. I actually was thinking going back to Friday Night Lights and rewatching that again.
Oh, yes,
it'd be watch number 3 for me, but you can never go wrong with that. So that might be the next one.
Yeah. I haven't seen The Sopranos either. Isn't the last episode, the way they end it, kind of like hit and miss on some people if they like it or not?
Yeah. So I knew of that scene and knew of the whole thing just because of pop culture, and it was all over the place when it happened. And it still caught me off guard when it happened. Like, it's still, I knew exactly what was coming. I knew what part of the episode I was in. I said to my fiance, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, stop talking. This is the moment. And then it ended, and I sat there for at least 5 minutes. I just couldn't fathom what I had watched. And then I proceeded to text a couple of my friends that had watched it and were waiting for my reaction, and just sparked a huge debate on what I thought and what they thought. I went down a rabbit hole. I found this it had to be like nine webpage diatribe about the meaning of that episode and the scene. And I read every word of this monologue. It was like 12:30 at night, and I was just clicking into a rabbit hole of the theories of the last episode of Sopranos. So it was good to get my mind off of work for a little bit, but I don't know if it was necessarily good for my mind.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, awesome. Yeah, I might have to give it how many seasons is it?
6 seasons. The majority of the seasons are, I think, 13 episodes, and then the last season is 21. They just hit you with like a whammy.
Dang. All right, quite the investment.
But it's worth it. It really, the show, obviously it's pretty heavy at some points. Like, they don't hold anything back by any means. But it's worth every minute of it. It's good.
Gotcha. Well, perfect.
Especially, I don't know your background, but like, my family is, almost every part of my family, except for where my last name comes from, is Italian. So that part of it, and the whole tie-in of the family, and all that, there was more of a, I grew up right close to Providence and all those areas. So there was a little bit more of a tie for me, I think, to that as well. So
yeah, it definitely hits a little harder.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That's the last question I had. So thank you for taking part in this spotlight. For everybody tuning in, I hope you guys learned something new about Nick. And as always, if you have any questions for Nick, feel free to hit him up in the Slack community. Always feel free to shoot him a DM. But thank you all for tuning in. Nick, thanks again for joining. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.